From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
I've long believed that our power is rooted not just in our military might, but in our example as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's why I've made a second decision. I will seek authorization for the use of force from the American people's representatives in Congress.
In a surprise move, President Obama delays military action against Syria, saying he'll first try to win congressional approval. We'll speak with Fawaz Gerges, author of Obama and the Middle East. Then a New York Times expose on how U.S. drug agents have access to decades of AT&T phone records, eclipsing the NSA. And we remember the late British broadcaster David Frost, who interviewed Richard Nixon in 1977.
The president can decide that it's in the best interest of the nation or something and do something illegal.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
By definition.
Exactly.
We'll hear from Ron Howard, director of the film Frost Nixon. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Obama administration's gaining ground in its bid to win congressional approval before launching a military strike against Syria. Arizona Republican Senator John McCain met with Obama Monday, along with fellow Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. After the meeting, McCain told reporters he believes a vote against the strikes would have catastrophic consequences. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee will hold its first hearing on Obama's proposal today. On Sunday, Secretary of State John Kerry said in television interviews that hair and blood samples from Syria have tested positive for the nerve gas sarin. His claims came a day after President Obama made the announcement he would seek congressional backing for military action following reports of a chemical weapons attack last month that killed more than 1,400 people outside the capital, Damascus.
I'm confident in the case our government has made without waiting for UN inspectors. I'm comfortable going forward without the approval of a United Nations Security Council that so far has been completely paralyzed and unwilling to hold Assad accountable. Here's my question for every member of Congress and every member of the global community. What message will we send if a dictator can gas hundreds of children to death in plain sight and pay no price?
A report presented to the French Parliament Monday concluded the chemical attack was carried out by the Syrian government. The United Nations, meanwhile, says the number of civilians who fled Syria has topped 2 million, with fear of Western airstrikes helping to fuel the flow of Syrians into neighboring countries. Protests by anti-war groups against the proposed strike are continuing across the country and around the world. We'll have more on Syria after headlines. The Israeli military has claimed responsibility for a missile launch in the central Mediterranean Sea that sparked a flurry of speculation amidst talk of U.S. military action against Syria. Russia's defense ministry said its warning system had detected missiles in the area this morning. Israel initially denied responsibility, but later said it was carrying out a joint test with the United States. The New York Times has revealed the Drug Enforcement Administration has access to the records of every phone call that passes through AT&T's system through a vast and secretive operation called the Hemisphere Project. Under the program, the U.S. government pays for AT&T employees to station themselves inside DEA units where they can quickly hand over records dating back to 1987, a longer period than records collected by the National Security Agency. We'll speak with the author of the story, Scott Shane, later in the broadcast. Revelations about spying by the National Security Agency based on leaks by former contractor Edward Snowden are continuing to emerge. On Sunday, the Brazilian news show Fantástico reported the NSA targeted the emails, text messages, and phone calls of the presidents of Brazil and Mexico. The news show used documents provided by journalist Glenn Greenwald, who lives in Brazil. He obtained them from Snowden. They included an NSA slide dated June 2012, before Peña Nieto became president of Mexico, that included messages about his potential picks for cabinet posts. Both Brazil and Mexico summoned their U.S. ambassadors following the revelations. Mexico called for the U.S. to investigate, while Brazil's foreign minister demanded a written explanation and suggested Brazil might cancel an upcoming U.S. visit by President Dilma Rousseff.
Às 9 horas da manhã, convoquei.
Today at 9 this morning, we summoned the Ambassador of the United States, Thomas Shannon, to my cabinet and explained the indignation of the Brazilian government in light of these facts contained in these documents which were revealed. The violations of the communications of Our Lady, President of the Republic. From our point of view, this represents an impermissible and unacceptable violation of Brazilian sovereignty.
Meanwhile, the German magazine Der Spiegel says NSA documents leaked by Edward Snowden show the spy agency hacked into the internal communications of the news broadcaster Al Jazeera. The Washington Post, citing top-secret budget documents provided by Snowden, has revealed the United States is conducting cyber attacks against other countries on a scale far wider than previously known. The report says in the year 2011, U.S. intelligence services conducted 231 offensive cyber operations. The documents also reveal a sweeping effort dubbed Genie, whereby the United States hacks into foreign networks in order to place them under covert control. Japan is pledging to spend roughly $470 million to address a radioactive water crisis at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was battered by an earthquake and tsunami in 2011. The announcement today comes after the plant's operator said it had detected radiation levels near a water storage tank that were 18 times higher than previously believed. A large portion of the funds would go toward building an underground wall of frozen earth to contain the leaks. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Monday drastic action is needed.
We cannot let the issue of water contamination at the troubled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant be dealt with only by Tokyo Electric Power Company. From now on, the government will lead to provide a comprehensive solution.
In Egypt, a panel of judges has called for the Muslim Brotherhood to be legally dissolved. The recommendation Monday came a day after Egypt's top prosecutor ordered ousted President Mohamed Morsi and a number of other Brotherhood leaders to face trial for charges that include inciting the murder of protesters. Protests against the military-backed government have continued despite a deadly crackdown against the Muslim Brotherhood that has killed more than 1,000 people. Egypt's crackdown has also extended to the media. A court today ordered Al Jazeera's affiliate in Egypt to stop broadcasting. The ban also extends to 3 other stations that have covered the protests, including one run by the Muslim Brotherhood. On Sunday, Egypt deported 3 Al Jazeera journalists after detaining them for 5 days. Taliban militants attacked a U.S. military base in eastern Afghanistan Monday, setting vehicles on fire and prompting the shutdown of a NATO supply route. 3 attackers were killed. The violence marked the latest in a series of attacks that have killed dozens of Afghans in recent days. New figures from the Afghan government show the number of police deaths in Afghanistan has doubled this year. On Friday, U.S. drone strikes killed at least 6 people in Yemen. Local security sources said the dead included 2 top leaders of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, a U.S. drone attack killed at least 4 people in North Waziristan Saturday. Officials there also claimed the victims were militants. A juvenile court in India has delivered the first conviction in a gang rape case that ignited mass protests in December. The rape victim, Jyoti Singh Pandey, died 2 weeks after she and a male companion were beaten on a bus in Delhi. On Saturday, an unnamed 18-year-old who was 17 at the time of the attack was sentenced to 3 years in juvenile detention following his conviction for rape and murder. The sentence is the maximum allowed for youth offenders, but the victim's family and women's rights activists decried it as too lenient. 4 adult men remain on trial and could face the death penalty. Former South African President Nelson Mandela has spent a second night at home after being discharged from the hospital. Mandela is 95 years old. He'd been hospitalized for 12 weeks with a recurrent lung infection. A spokesperson for South African President Jacob Zuma said Mandela's recovery is ongoing.
Former President Nelson Mandela has this morning, Sunday, the 1st of September 2013, been discharged from Pretoria Hospital where he has been receiving treatment. We would like to wish him all the best as he continues his recovery at his Johannesburg home. Madiba's condition remains critical and is at times unstable. Nevertheless, his team of doctors is convinced that he will receive the same level of intensive care at his Houghton home as he received in Pretoria.
Verizon has reached an agreement with Vodafone to obtain sole control of Verizon Wireless, the world's largest wireless provider. The telecommunications company will pay $130 billion to acquire Vodafone's 45% stake in Verizon Wireless. According to Reuters, it's the third largest corporate deal ever announced. And U.S. long-distance swimmer Diana Nyad has become the first person to swim from Cuba to Florida without using a shark cage. Nyad had attempted the crossing 4 previous times, starting in 1978. The 64-year-old spoke to supporters after emerging from the water.
There's 3 messages. One is we should never, ever give up.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.